My name is Kelly, and I am 28 years old. I have always been the dependable one in my family, the older sister who stepped up when needed, the daughter who never asked for much in return. My younger sister was about to get engaged, and I was genuinely happy for her. I wanted to help make her special day perfect. I never imagined that helping my family would lead to the most painful betrayal of my life. Before we dive into what happened, I would love to know where you are watching from. Please hit that like button and subscribe if you have not already, because what I am about to share will make you rethink everything you know about family loyalty. Growing up, I was always the responsible child. My parents raised me and my younger sister Stephanie in a comfortable middle-class home somewhere in the suburbs of Oregon. Dad worked a steady office job at an insurance company, and Mom taught third grade at our local elementary school. They were good parents who provided for us, but there was always a clear difference in how they treated Stephanie and me. I was 5 years older than Stephanie, and from the moment she was born, she became the baby of the family in every sense of the word. While I was expected to maintain good grades, help with chores, and be mature beyond my years, Stephanie was allowed to be carefree, dramatic, and the center of attention. I did not resent her for it back then. I loved my little sister. I protected her at school, helped her with homework, and celebrated her wins as if they were my own. By the time I finished college, I had landed a solid job as a marketing manager at a tech company in Seattle. I worked hard, saved money, and built a stable life for myself. I was proud of what I had accomplished. Stephanie, on the other hand, took a different path. She went to community college for 2 years, then decided school was not for her. She worked retail jobs and lived at home with our parents until she was 23 when she met Brandon. Brandon was everything our parents dreamed of for Stephanie. He came from money, real money. His parents owned a chain of upscale restaurants across the West Coast, the kind of places with wait lists and reviews in food magazines. Brandon himself was charming, good-looking, and clearly smitten with my sister. I met him a handful of times at family dinners, and he seemed decent enough. A little too polished for my taste, but I could see why Stephanie fell for him. About a month ago, Stephanie called me late one evening. Her voice was bursting with excitement, and I could hear Brandon laughing in the background. She did not even wait for me to say hello properly before she screamed into the phone that Brandon had proposed. I felt genuine happiness for her in that moment. Despite our differences, despite the favoritism I had grown accustomed to, I wanted my sister to be happy. She told me all about the proposal. Brandon had taken her to this beautiful overlook near the Columbia River Gorge at sunset. He had hired a photographer to capture the moment, and apparently there were rose petals and champagne waiting for them afterward. It sounded like something out of a romantic movie, exactly the kind of grand gesture Stephanie had always dreamed about. Then she told me about the engagement party. Brandon's parents wanted to host a celebration in Hawaii, specifically in Maui. They owned a timeshare at a luxury resort in Wailea right on the beach. The plan was to have an intimate sunset ceremony on a private section of the beach, followed by a formal dinner at the resort. Stephanie described it with such enthusiasm, talking about the turquoise water, the Hawaiian music, and the flower arrangements Brandon's mother was already planning. I congratulated her, asked about wedding plans, and told her I could not wait to see her walk down the aisle someday. We talked for nearly an hour, and it felt like old times, like when we were kids, and she would tell me about her dreams, and I would listen with genuine interest. A few days later, Mom and Dad invited me over for dinner. They said they needed to talk to me about something important, and their tone made me worry that something was wrong. I drove to their house that Sunday afternoon, my mind running through possibilities. Was someone sick? Were they having financial trouble? When I arrived, they were sitting at the kitchen table with serious expressions. Mom poured me a cup of coffee, and Dad cleared his throat in that way he does when he is uncomfortable. Then they explained the situation. Brandon's family wanted both sets of parents to contribute to the engagement party expenses. It was supposed to be a gesture of unity, a way of showing that both families were invested in the couple's future together. The problem was money. The estimated cost for my parents to attend was around $6,000. That included round-trip flights from Portland to Maui, 5 nights at the resort meals that were not included in the package activities, and appropriate gifts. Dad explained they had been saving and had managed to put together about $3,000, but they were still short by half. I could see the shame in Dad's eyes as he told me this. He was a proud man who had always provided for his family, and admitting he could not afford to fully participate in his daughter's engagement celebration was clearly eating at him. Mom looked worried too, her hands wrapped around her coffee mug, knuckles white. They told me they were considering taking out a small loan or putting it on a credit card, but they wanted to be honest with me first. I knew what they were hoping for, even though they did not say it directly. They wanted help, but they were too proud to ask outright. I did not even hesitate. I told them I would cover the entire cost of their trip, all $6,200, including a little extra for incidentals and tips. This was Stephanie's big moment, I explained, and our parents deserved to be there without financial stress. They had raised both of us, had sacrificed so much to give us good lives. This was the least I could do to give back. Mom started crying and came around the table to hug me. Dad shook my hand firmly, his eyes glistening. They promised they would pay me back, though I told them not to worry about it. In that moment, I felt good about my decision. I felt like I was doing something meaningful for my family, something that would make Stephanie's engagement even more special. I transferred the money to Dad's account the very next day. $6,200, a significant chunk of my savings, but I did not think twice about it. Family comes first, I told myself. That is what we do for the people we love. The following 2 weeks were filled with excitement. Stephanie created a group text thread with me, our parents, Brandon, and his parents. She shared the itinerary for the trip: 5 days in paradise, arriving on a Thursday and leaving the following Monday. The engagement party itself would take place on Saturday evening right at sunset, when the light would be perfect for photographs. The resort looked absolutely stunning in the pictures Stephanie shared. It was one of those places with infinity pools that seemed to blend into the ocean, with palm trees swaying in the breeze and white sand beaches stretching as far as the eye could see. The rooms were elegant, decorated in soothing neutral tones, with private balconies overlooking the water. Stephanie had already picked out her outfit for the engagement party, a flowing white dress that would photograph beautifully against the ocean backdrop. She asked me what I was planning to wear, and I told her I was thinking of a coral-colored sundress I had bought last summer. She said that would be perfect, that coral would look amazing in the beach setting. I felt included in all the planning. Stephanie would text me pictures of flower arrangements she was considering, asking my opinion on orchids versus plumerias. She sent me links to restaurants they might visit, asking if I thought Mom and Dad would prefer seafood or steak for the rehearsal dinner. It felt natural, sisterly, the way things should be. I booked my own flight using points I had saved up through my credit card. I found a decent option that would get me to Maui on Thursday afternoon, the same day my parents were arriving, though on a different flight. I requested the time off from work, and my boss approved it without any issues. I was excited not just for Stephanie, but for the chance to spend time in Hawaii. I had never been, and the idea of a few days in paradise sounded wonderful. I even went shopping for the trip. Besides the coral dress, I bought a new swimsuit, some casual outfits for daytime activities, and a pair of sandals that would be comfortable for walking on the beach. I purchased a beautiful journal as an engagement gift for Stephanie and Brandon, something they could use to write down memories and plans for their future together. Everything seemed perfect. I was genuinely happy and looking forward to celebrating my sister's engagement in such a beautiful location. Then, 3 days before the departure date, Stephanie called me. It was a Tuesday evening, and I was at home packing my suitcase when my phone rang. I answered cheerfully, expecting her to be calling about some last-minute detail or to share her excitement about the trip. But her voice sounded different. There was hesitation in it, an uncomfortable quality I was not used to hearing from my usually confident sister. She asked what I was doing, and I told her I was packing. There was a long pause on the other end. Then she said there had been a change of plans regarding the Hawaii trip. My first thought was that maybe they had to switch hotels or that the party time had changed. I asked her what kind of change, trying to keep my voice light and easy. Stephanie stumbled over her words. She said Brandon's family had decided to make the engagement party more intimate. Just immediate family and his parents' closest friends, she explained. The venue had capacity limitations and things had gotten complicated with the guest list. I felt a small sting of confusion. I pointed out that I was immediate family. I was her sister, her only sibling. How could an immediate family event not include me? She got defensive quickly. She said I needed to understand that Brandon's parents were paying for most of the event, and they had strong opinions about the guest list. It was their money, their timeshare, their rules. The way she said it made me feel like I was being unreasonable for even questioning the decision. I tried a different approach. I asked when the actual engagement party for extended family would be, assuming this Hawaii trip was just a small preview and that there would be a bigger celebration later that I could attend. Stephanie's answer was vague. She said they would figure something out, maybe a dinner when they got back to Oregon, but nothing was planned yet. We were on a video call, and I noticed she would not look directly at the camera. Her eyes kept darting away, and she kept tucking her hair behind her ear, which was something she did when she was nervous or lying. I had known her long enough to recognize the tell. I felt hurt, but I tried not to show it. I told her I understood that if the venue had limitations, then that was just how it had to be. I said I hoped she would have an amazing time and that I could not wait to see pictures. I was trying to be mature about it to not make her feel guilty, even though inside I felt a growing sense of disappointment. Stephanie seemed relieved that I was not making a scene. She thanked me for being so understanding and said she loved me. Then she quickly said Brandon was calling her and she had to go. The call ended abruptly, and I was left staring at my phone, feeling unsettled. I sat on my bed, surrounded by the clothes I had been packing, and tried to rationalize the situation. Maybe the venue really did have strict capacity limits. Maybe Brandon's parents were particular about keeping things small and elegant. Rich people operated differently, I told myself. They had different rules and expectations about events. I sent Stephanie a text message telling her again that I understood and wishing her a wonderful trip. I added a heart emoji trying to be supportive. Her response came several minutes later, just the word, thanks, with no emojis, no warmth, nothing like her usual texting style. That response bothered me more than I wanted to admit. Stephanie was typically effusive with her messages, always adding multiple emojis and exclamation points. This flat one-word response felt cold. I decided to call Mom to confirm the details and maybe get some reassurance. Mom answered on the third ring, and I could hear Dad talking in the background. I asked her about the change in plans, wanting to hear her perspective on the situation. Mom's voice had that same uncomfortable quality that Stephanie's had. She confirmed that yes, the party was going to be small, just a few people. When I asked if she and Dad were still going, there was a pause that lasted too long. Then she said, of course they were still going. They were Stephanie's parents. They had to be there. The way she said had to be there implied that somehow my presence was optional, that my role as Stephanie's sister was less important than their role as parents. I asked her directly if she thought it was fair that I was being excluded after I had paid for their trip. Mom got defensive immediately. She said I should not think of it that way, that my gift to them was separate from the party guest list, and that I was being overly sensitive. I felt a familiar frustration rising. This was the pattern I had experienced my whole life. Stephanie's needs and wants always took priority, and I was expected to be understanding, flexible, and mature about it. Anytime I expressed hurt or disappointment, I was told I was overreacting or being too sensitive. I ended the call politely telling Mom I hoped they had a safe flight and a good trip. But after I hung up, I sat in silence staring at my half-packed suitcase. Something felt wrong about this entire situation, but I could not quite put my finger on what it was. I tried to push the uncomfortable feeling away and focus on being happy for my sister, but it lingered like a shadow I could not shake. The day my family was supposed to fly to Hawaii arrived. It was a Thursday, and I had taken the day off work, even though I was no longer going on the trip. I spent the morning doing errands and trying not to think about the fact that my parents and sister were heading to paradise without me. Around noon, I sent a text to the family group chat wishing everyone a safe flight and a wonderful trip. I kept it cheerful and supportive, not wanting to create any awkwardness. I waited for responses, but none came. I figured they were probably busy with last-minute packing and getting to the airport. That evening, I found myself restlessly scrolling through social media. I was not looking for anything in particular, just mindlessly passing time. That is when I saw a post on Instagram from someone I vaguely recognized as Brandon's cousin. The photo showed a group of people at the airport, all wearing leis and holding boarding passes. They were clearly excited, smiling broadly at the camera. I zoomed in on the photo, and my heart sank. There was Stephanie looking radiant in a cute travel outfit. There were my parents, Mom in a new blouse I had never seen before, Dad with his arm around her shoulder. There was Brandon and his parents, both dressed expensively as always. The caption read, "Off to Paradise Maui bound." I stared at the photo for a long time. The group looked happy and excited. No one had responded to my well wishes in the group chat, but they had time to pose for Instagram photos. It stung, but I tried to rationalize it. They were probably rushing through security, I told myself. They would respond later. I tried to distract myself with other things. I watched a movie made dinner called A Friend, but that photo kept popping back into my mind. Something about it bothered me beyond just feeling left out. There was something in the energy of that picture, in the way everyone looked so carefree and happy, that made me feel like an afterthought. The next day, Friday, was when things got worse. I was at work trying to focus on a project deadline when I got a notification during my lunch break. Brandon's mother had posted an album on Facebook and tagged several people, including my parents. The album was titled Stephanie and Brandon's Engagement Celebration. I clicked on it with a sense of dread building in my stomach. The first photo loaded, and what I saw made me feel physically sick. It was not a small, intimate gathering. It was a huge group shot taken in the resort lobby. I started counting faces. 10, 15, 20, 25. At least 25 people were in that photograph. My hands started shaking as I scrolled through more pictures. There was a pool party with everyone wearing matching Hawaiian shirts and flower leaves. There was an elaborate dinner setup with a long table decorated with tropical flowers and candles, place cards set at each seat. There were candid shots of people laughing, toasting with cocktails, enjoying themselves in paradise. I saw my parents in multiple photos. Mom was wearing that new dress, the one I had not recognized in the airport photo. Dad had a tropical shirt on that I had never seen either. They both looked happier than I had seen them in years, laughing and mingling with Brandon's extended family. Then I saw a photo that made my chest tight. It showed Stephanie surrounded by 3 of her closest friends, all of them holding champagne glasses and wearing matching robes. These were her bridesmaids, I realized. Girls I knew, girls whose names I could recall from stories Stephanie had told me over the years. They were all there, all included in this supposedly intimate, immediate family-only event. I clicked on the caption Brandon's mother had written, "So blessed to celebrate these 2 lovebirds with all our nearest and dearest. 28 guests and counting. 28 guests. This was not intimate. This was not immediate family only. This was a full-blown engagement party, and I had been specifically excluded from it. I sat at my desk in my office, staring at my computer screen, trying to process what I was seeing. People were walking past my door. Normal workday sounds were happening around me, but I felt completely disconnected from it all. My mind was racing, trying to understand how this had happened. They had lied to me. That was the simple, painful truth. Stephanie had looked me in the eye through that video call and told me the party was too small to include me. Mom and Dad had backed up that story, but here was photographic evidence that it was nothing close to small or intimate. I clicked on another post, this one from one of Stephanie's friends. The caption read, "Can't believe I almost missed this. Thanks for including me at the last minute." Last minute. They had added people at the last minute, spontaneous invitations for friends and extended family, but I, the sister who had paid for my parents to attend, had been deliberately uninvited. I felt a comment from Brandon's cousin on another photo. Road trip crew made it worth the spontaneous flight. More last-minute additions, more proof that the capacity limitation story had been a complete lie. I closed my laptop and told my supervisor I was not feeling well. It was not a lie. I felt nauseous, dizzy, and my hands would not stop shaking. I left work early and drove home in a daze, my mind unable to fully grasp the magnitude of what my family had done. When I got home, I tried to reach out, needing some kind of explanation. I sent a text to Stephanie. "Just saw the photos. Looks like an amazing party. Much bigger than you described." I tried to keep my tone neutral, not accusatory, even though anger was building inside me. An hour passed with no response. Then 2 hours. I sent another message, this time to my mother. "Mom, I saw there are almost 30 people there. I thought it was just immediate family." I waited, checking my phone compulsively, desperate for some kind of answer that would make sense of this. Mom finally responded almost 2 hours later. Her message was short and dismissive. It grew a bit. "Brandon's family invited more people. Don't worry about it, sweetie. Don't worry about it." As if I was overreacting to a minor inconvenience. As if being excluded from my own sister's engagement party after paying $6,000 for my parents to attend was something I should just casually accept. The hurt I had been feeling started transforming into something else. Anger. Yes, but also a crystal clear realization I had been used. They had taken my money knowing full well they were going to exclude me. This was not a last-minute change or an unfortunate circumstance. This had been planned. By the third evening of their trip, I could not take it anymore. I had spent 2 days watching social media updates, seeing my family having the time of their lives, while I sat alone in my apartment feeling betrayed and foolish. I needed answers, and I needed them directly. I calculated the time difference. It was 9 p.m. in Hawaii midnight for me, late enough that I did not care if I was interrupting something. I called Stephanie, and after several rings, she answered. I could hear music in the background, laughter, the sound of ocean waves. They were at some kind of event, clearly having fun. Stephanie's voice had an edge of annoyance when she answered. She asked what I wanted, and I could tell she knew why I was calling. I told her we needed to talk, that I needed to understand what was happening. She sighed dramatically and said I was calling at a bad time. They were at a luau the resort was hosting. I did not care about her inconvenience anymore. I asked her point blank why she had told me the party was too small to include me when there were clearly 30 people there. I kept my voice steady, but inside I was shaking with emotion. Stephanie got defensive immediately. She said things had changed, that Brandon's family had wanted to include more people, and it was their money, so they got to make those decisions. I pointed out that she had specifically uninvited me her own sister while adding friends and extended family members at the last minute. There was a pause, and then Stephanie said something that made my blood run cold. She said Brandon's mother had thought it would be awkward to have me there. When I asked why I would be awkward, Stephanie hesitated before answering. Then she said quietly that I was single and everyone else was bringing partners, and Brandon's mom was particular about couple aesthetics for the photos. I could not believe what I was hearing. I had been excluded because I did not have a boyfriend, because my presence as a single woman would somehow ruin the visual aesthetic of their engagement photos. The cruelty of it, the sheer superficiality, left me speechless for a moment. When I found my voice again, I brought up the money. I reminded Stephanie that I had paid $6,000 for our parents to attend this party. I had funded their participation in an event I was deliberately excluded from. Did she not see how wrong that was? Stephanie's response made everything worse. She said coldly that my parents were there, so my money had achieved its purpose. I had wanted to help them attend, and they were attending, as if the whole point had just been a financial transaction with no emotional component. I asked her directly if she had planned to uninvite me from the start, if taking my money had been part of some calculated scheme. Stephanie did not answer that question directly. Instead, she said that nobody had asked me to pay, that I had offered. She made it sound like I had forced the money on them and therefore had no right to expect anything in return. My voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm, I told her that she and our parents had made me feel like they could not afford the trip. They had created a situation where I felt obligated to help. Stephanie snapped back, calling me dramatic. She said I made good money and that $6,000 had not bankrupted me, so why was I making such a big deal out of it? The dismissiveness in her tone, the complete lack of empathy or understanding, broke something inside me. This was not the sister I thought I knew. Or maybe it was, and I had just been too blind to see who she really was all along. I told Stephanie we were not done talking about this, and I asked her to put our parents on the phone. She refused, saying they were busy enjoying the luau. When I insisted, she told me I was ruining her engagement celebration with my negativity. Then she said Brandon was waiting for her and she had to go. Before I could say another word, she hung up on me. I sat staring at my phone, hands trembling with a mixture of rage and heartbreak. I had been dismissed, minimized, and treated like my feelings did not matter at all. After a few minutes of sitting in shock, I opened my text messages and sent a message to my father. "Did you know they were going to uninvite me when you took my money?" The wait for his response felt eternal. When it finally came 30 minutes later, it was not what I wanted to hear. Dad admitted they had not known at first, but Stephanie had told them a few days before the trip. They were sorry, he wrote, but these things happen. Sorry. A casual apology, as if they had accidentally bumped into me in a hallway rather than participated in a calculated betrayal. I asked the question that I already knew the answer to. And you still went, using the money I gave you? Dad did not respond for several minutes. Then Mom jumped into the conversation, her text appearing on my screen like salt in a wound. Mom told me not to make this difficult. Stephanie was getting married and they could not miss this important moment. Then she added a line that felt like a slap across the face. "You'll understand when you settle down." When you settle down. Another reference to my single status, another implication that my worth and my feelings were somehow less valid because I did not have a romantic partner. The message was clear. Stephanie's life milestones mattered more than my dignity because she had achieved the relationship status they valued. I typed back that I could not believe they had done this, that this was not just about a party, but about them choosing Stephanie over me, lying to me and using me for money. I told them I felt betrayed by my own family. Mom's response came quickly. "You're overreacting. We'll celebrate together when we're back. It's just one party." Just one party. They still did not get it. This was not about missing an event. This was about being treated as expendable, as a convenient source of funding, but not worthy of inclusion. This was about being lied to by the people who were supposed to love me most in the world. Dad sent one final message. "No one lied. Things changed. Be mature about this." Be mature. The same words I had heard my entire life whenever I was expected to accept less to accommodate Stephanie, to suppress my own needs and feelings for the sake of family harmony. I stared at my phone screen through tears. In that moment, I realized something fundamental had shifted. I could not unsee what I now saw clearly. My family had used me. They had manipulated my love and sense of obligation to fund a trip they knew I would not be part of. And now they were gaslighting me, making me feel like I was wrong for being hurt. I was done being the understanding one. I was done being mature about being treated poorly. Something inside me hardened, and I knew I needed to protect myself from further hurt. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I did not sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every text message, every moment of the past few weeks. The more I thought about it, the clearer the pattern became. This was not just about one party. This was about a lifetime of being taken for granted, of being expected to give while receiving nothing in return. When morning came, I felt different. The hurt was still there, but it had crystallized into something harder, clearer. I knew what I needed to do, and I did not second-guess myself. I picked up my phone and started blocking numbers. First, I blocked Stephanie on everything. Her phone number, Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, every platform where she could reach me. Then I did the same with my parents. Block, block, block. Each tap of my finger felt like taking back a piece of myself. I blocked Brandon, blocked his parents, blocked every member of his family I had connected with on social media. The relief was immediate and surprising. It felt like lifting a heavy weight off my chest, like opening a window in a stuffy room. I had spent so much energy over the past few days, consumed by their actions, checking for messages, hoping for an apology or explanation. Now I had cut off that source of pain. But I was not finished. Before I blocked my father's number, I sent him one final text message. I wrote, "I want my $6,200 back. You have 30 days. After that, I will take legal action." I did not wait for a response. I hit send and immediately blocked his number. I felt powerful in that moment, not vindictive but strong. I was setting a boundary, demanding to be treated with basic respect and fairness. They had used my money under false pretenses, and I had every right to ask for it back. The rest of that day was strange. I called in sick to work, needing time to process everything. I sat with my coffee, my phone now blessedly quiet, and really let myself feel the full weight of what had happened. I was not just sad. I was grieving. I was mourning the family I thought I had, the relationships I had believed were real. I realized this was not the first time I had been treated as less than. My entire childhood flashed through my mind in a new light. Every time my accomplishments were downplayed while Stephanie's minor wins were celebrated elaborately. My college graduation had been marked with a simple dinner at a chain restaurant. Stephanie's graduation from community college, despite her mediocre grades, had been celebrated with a weekend trip to San Francisco. When I got my first promotion at work, Mom had said that was nice, and then immediately changed the subject to talk about Stephanie's new boyfriend. When Stephanie got a part-time management role at her retail job, Dad had posted about it on Facebook, calling her his successful daughter. I had always been expected to be mature, understanding, and flexible. Stephanie had always been allowed to be demanding, emotional, and prioritized, and I had accepted that dynamic because I loved them and thought that was just how families worked. But now I saw it for what it was: a pattern of favoritism and emotional manipulation that had conditioned me to accept less than I deserved. They had trained me to be convenient, to give without expecting anything in return, to suppress my needs for the sake of keeping peace. That evening, my best friend Jessica came over. She was a colleague from work who had become one of my closest friends over the past few years. She had texted earlier asking how I was doing, and something in my response had worried her enough to show up at my door with takeout and wine. I told her everything. The whole story: spilled out the money, the lies, the uninvitation, the phone calls, the blocking. Jessica listened without interrupting, her expression growing more horrified with each detail. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment, processing it all. Then she said something that shifted my entire perspective. She said what they had done was not just rude or hurtful, it was financial exploitation. They had taken my money under false pretenses, knowing they were going to exclude me from the event. That was fraud, she explained. I had grounds to sue if I wanted to. I had not thought about it in legal terms. I had been so focused on the emotional betrayal that I had not considered the practical legal dimensions of what had happened. Jessica, who had attended law school for a year before, deciding it was not for her, understood these things better than I did. She pulled out her laptop and helped me draft a formal demand letter. We kept it professional and clear. I stated the amount owed, provided evidence of the bank transfer, referenced text messages that showed my parents knew about the exclusion before accepting the money, and set a clear deadline: 30 days to repay the full amount, or I would pursue legal action. We sent the letter to my father's email address before I had blocked that as well. Jessica helped me screenshot all the relevant text messages and social media posts as evidence, just in case I needed them later. She made me feel like I was not crazy, like my reaction was not only justified, but actually more restrained than the situation warranted. As we sat on my couch eating pad thai and drinking wine, Jessica said something that stuck with me. She said that blocking them was not petty or immature. It was an act of self-respect and self-preservation. She said I had every right to protect my peace, to refuse to be treated poorly, to demand basic fairness and dignity. For the first time in days, I did not feel like I was overreacting. I felt validated, supported, and clear-headed about what I was doing. The blocking was not about punishment. It was about protecting myself from further harm while I healed from this betrayal. The next week passed in relative peace. My phone stayed silent, which was both relieving and unsettling. I had grown so accustomed to daily texts from my family that the absence felt strange, like a phantom limb. But I did not unblock them. I held firm to my boundary. Then 6 days after they returned from Hawaii, things started to happen. My parents must have realized I had blocked them when they got back and tried to reach out. I did not know this directly, but I could piece it together from what happened next. On a Tuesday evening, exactly 1 week after I had sent the demand letter, my doorbell rang. I checked the peephole and saw my parents standing outside my apartment door. Mom looked like she had been crying. Dad looked uncomfortable and stern. I did not open the door. Instead, I used my intercom system. I asked what they wanted, my voice flat and emotionless. Dad said they needed to talk to me, that we needed to work this out as a family. I told them through the intercom that they had received my demand letter, and that was all I had to say. If they wanted to communicate, they could do so through email or by paying what they owed. Mom started pleading through the door. She was crying, saying I was her daughter, that we were family, that I could not just cut them out over one disagreement. The word disagreement made my blood pressure spike. This was not a disagreement. This was a betrayal, a lie, an exploitation. But I did not engage. I simply repeated that they had my terms, and I had nothing else to say. They stood outside my door for 30 minutes. I could hear them talking to each other. Mom crying. Dad trying to reason with her. Some of my neighbors walked past, and I felt embarrassed by the scene, but I did not open the door. Eventually, they left. I watched through my peephole as they walked down the hallway. Mom leaning on Dad, both of them looking defeated. I felt terrible in that moment despite everything. They were my parents. I had loved them my whole life. Seeing my mother cry because of something I had done was painful, even though I knew intellectually that I was not the one in the wrong here. But I also knew that if I opened that door, if I let them guilt me into backing down, nothing would change. They would apologize in the moment and then go right back to treating me as less than. 2 days later, I got a phone call from my Aunt Karen, my father's older sister. I almost did not answer, assuming she was calling to lecture me on behalf of my parents. But Aunt Karen and I had always had a decent relationship, so I picked up. To my surprise, she was not calling to scold me. She said she had heard what happened from my father, who had called her crying, which apparently was something he rarely did. She asked me to tell her my side of the story, and I did, laying out all the facts as clearly as I could. When I finished, Aunt Karen was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that made me cry with relief. She said she believed me, she was on my side, and what my parents and Stephanie had done was absolutely wrong. She said she had always noticed the favoritism towards Stephanie, had tried to mention it to my father years ago, but he had dismissed her concerns. Aunt Karen told me that my parents were panicking. Apparently, word had gotten out in our extended family and church community about what had happened. She was not sure who had started talking, maybe someone from Brandon's family mentioning it casually, but now people knew. And the reaction was not what my parents had expected. People were shocked. Church friends had confronted my mother, asking how she could have accepted money from one daughter to attend the other daughter's party while excluding the one who paid. Extended family members were choosing sides, and most of them were on mine. Even some of Brandon's relatives had apparently expressed discomfort with how the situation had been handled. Stephanie's reputation had taken a hit too. Some of her friends had started distancing themselves, calling her spoiled and entitled behind her back. The whole thing had become messy in ways my family had not anticipated. They had thought they could quietly exclude me, and that would be the end of it, but instead, it had blown up into a family scandal. Aunt Karen told me she was proud of me for standing up for myself. She said too many people, especially women, allow themselves to be treated poorly by family because they are afraid of being seen as difficult or causing drama. But I had done the right thing by setting boundaries and demanding respect. Before we hung up, she asked if I would consider family therapy eventually. I told her honestly that I was not ready. Maybe someday, but not now. Right now, I needed distance and time to heal. She understood and told me she would always be there if I needed to talk. On day 28, after I had sent the demand letter 2 days before my deadline, I received an email from my father. The subject line read, "Payment Arrangement." My heart pounded as I opened it. The email was formal, almost businesslike in tone. Dad wrote that they could not pay the full amount immediately. They had spent money on the Hawaii trip and on other expenses related to Stephanie's upcoming wedding planning. However, they could pay $3,000 now and the remaining balance over the next 3 months in installments. I forwarded the email to Jessica and asked her opinion. She said it was something more than nothing and I had leverage to negotiate terms. I could push for the full amount immediately and potentially win in small claims court, or I could accept the payment plan with strict conditions. I thought about it for several hours. Part of me wanted to refuse to force them to face immediate consequences. But the practical part of me recognized that getting some money now and the rest guaranteed over time was better than a lengthy legal battle. I replied to my father's email with my conditions. I would accept the payment plan only if they agreed to sign a written contract, set up automatic payments, so I did not have to chase them down each month, and understand that if they missed even one payment, the entire remaining balance would become due immediately. I also made it clear that accepting this arrangement did not mean I was resuming any relationship with them. The payment plan was purely a financial agreement. I ended the email by saying, "This does not fix what you did. This does not earn back my trust. This is simply you returning money you should never have accepted under the circumstances in which you accepted it." My father responded within an hour, agreeing to all terms. The next day, I received a Venmo payment for $3,000. The day after that, I received a PDF of a signed payment agreement via email with automatic payment authorization attached. 3 payments of $1,067 each due on the first of the following 3 months. I had done it. I had stood up for myself, and I was getting my money back. It did not erase the betrayal, but it felt like a form of justice. I had proven to myself and to them that I was not someone who could be used and discarded without consequence. The first month after everything happened was hard. The holidays were approaching, and for the first time in my life, I would not be spending them with my immediate family. Thanksgiving was only 2 weeks away, and the thought of that empty chair at a table I would not even be sitting at felt surreal. Jessica must have sensed what I was going through because she called me one evening and invited me to spend Thanksgiving with her family. She said her mom always made way too much food and they would love to have me. I was hesitant at first, not wanting to impose or to be the sad charity case at someone else's family gathering. But Jessica insisted, and eventually I agreed. Thanksgiving Day arrived and I drove to Jessica's childhood home about 40 minutes outside the city. I was nervous walking up to the door carrying a pumpkin pie I had bought from a bakery and a bottle of wine. Jessica's family was warm and welcoming from the moment I walked in. Her mother hugged me like I was one of her own children. Her father shook my hand and immediately started telling dad jokes. Her younger brother was there with his girlfriend, and they were friendly and easy to talk to. There was no awkwardness, no pity, just genuine kindness. Dinner was chaotic in the best way. People talked over each other, laughed loudly, teased each other good-naturedly. Jessica's mom kept piling food on my plate, insisting I try everything. It was so different from the tense performative dinners I had grown up with where we all played our assigned roles and pretended everything was perfect. What struck me most was how they treated each other. When Jessica mentioned a work accomplishment, her parents celebrated it genuinely. When her brother talked about a setback he had experienced, they supported him without judgment. There was no comparison, no favoritism, no one person being elevated above the others. They seemed to genuinely like each other, not just love each other out of obligation. I found myself getting emotional during dessert, tears welling up unexpectedly. Jessica's mom noticed and gently asked if I was okay. I nodded and said I was fine, that I was just grateful to be there. She squeezed my hand and said I was welcome any time, that her door was always open. Driving home that night, I realized something important. This was what family was supposed to feel like. Not the family you are born into necessarily, but the people who choose you and whom you choose in return. People who treat you with respect, who celebrate your successes, who support you through difficulties without conditions or manipulation. I started therapy the following week. I had been putting it off, telling myself I could handle everything on my own, but I knew I needed professional help to process what had happened. My therapist was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a direct manner. I liked her immediately. Over the next several weeks, we unpacked my family dynamics. She helped me see patterns I had been blind to my entire life. The way I had been conditioned to minimize my own needs. The way I had learned to accept crumbs of affection and call it love. The way I had been gaslit into believing that setting boundaries was selfish or immature. She used a term I had not heard before: parentification. She explained that from a young age I had been given adult responsibilities and expectations. I had been made to be the mature one, the responsible one, while Stephanie was allowed to remain childlike and catered to. It was a form of emotional neglect, she explained, even if my parents had not intended it that way. Understanding these dynamics helped me feel less crazy, less like there was something fundamentally wrong with me for not being able to just forgive and move on. I started to see that my reaction was not only justified, but healthy. I was finally standing up for myself after a lifetime of being conditioned not to. I threw myself into building a new life. I joined a yoga class and met interesting people there. I started attending a book club that met monthly at a local coffee shop. I began hiking on weekends, sometimes alone, sometimes with new acquaintances who shared the interest. Work became more fulfilling too. Without the constant emotional drain of managing my family relationships, I had more energy to invest in my career. I pitched a major campaign idea that my boss loved, and it ended up winning us a significant new client. 2 months after the Hawaii incident, I was promoted to senior manager with a substantial raise. My social media, which I had recreated with a new private Instagram account that did not include any family members, began to fill with pictures of my new life. Me at the top of a mountain after a challenging hike. Me laughing with friends at a wine tasting event. Me presenting at a work conference. I looked happy in these photos, genuinely happy in a way I had not looked in years. Friends started commenting on the change in me. They said I seemed lighter, more confident, more present. I realized they were right. For years, I had carried the weight of trying to earn my family's equal love and respect. Now that I had stopped trying, I felt free. The monthly payments from my parents came through like clockwork. First of the month, $1,067 appeared in my account. No messages accompanied them, no attempts to use the payment as an excuse to reestablish contact. It was purely transactional, which was exactly what I wanted. During my third month of therapy, I had a breakthrough session. I told my therapist that I felt guilty for not missing my family more. I had expected to be devastated to cry myself to sleep, to feel a gaping hole in my life. But instead, I mostly felt relief and increasingly happiness. My therapist smiled and said that told me everything I needed to know. When cutting off toxic relationships makes you feel lighter rather than heavier, it is a sign that those relationships were harming you more than helping you. The family I was mourning was not the family I actually had. I was mourning the family I wished I had, the one I had kept hoping would materialize if I just tried hard enough. She helped me see that it was okay to not want reconciliation right now, or possibly ever. I did not owe anyone access to my life, not even people I shared DNA with. Love was not supposed to hurt this much. Family was not supposed to use you and discard you. I deserved better, and it was okay to insist on better. Around month 4, I received a letter in the mail. It was not emailed, but an actual handwritten letter on nice stationery. The return address was Stephanie's. My hands shook as I opened it, unsure what to expect. The letter was 3 pages long, written in Stephanie's loopy handwriting. She apologized. She said she had been selfish and terrible. She admitted she had taken me for granted my whole life, had always known I was treated differently, and had never stood up for me. She said she had been so caught up in trying to impress Brandon's family that she had lost sight of what really mattered. Stephanie explained that the pressure from Brandon's mother about the perfect aesthetic for photos had gotten into her head. She said she felt ashamed now that she had chosen appearances over her sister. She wrote that she understood if I never forgave her, but she wanted me to know that she was genuinely sorry. The letter seemed sincere. There were spots on the paper that looked like tear stains. Her handwriting got messier toward the end, as if she was crying while writing. I could tell she had put thought and effort into this apology. I sat with the letter for several days, reading it multiple times, trying to discern my feelings. Part of me wanted to respond immediately to accept her apology and try to rebuild. That was the old Kelly, the one conditioned to smooth things over and maintain family harmony at any cost. But the new Kelly, the one I was becoming in therapy and through my healing journey, was more cautious. An apology was a start, but it did not undo the harm. It did not guarantee changed behavior in the future. And I had learned that I did not have to accept an apology just because one was offered. I decided to respond, but on my own terms. I wrote back via email, not giving her my new phone number or unblocking her on social media. I said I appreciated her apology and that it meant something to me that she had taken the time to reflect and write it out. But I also said I was not ready to resume our relationship. I needed more time, maybe a lot more time. I needed to see consistent change in behavior, not just words. I ended my email by saying that maybe someday we could rebuild our sisterhood, but it would have to be different from before. It would have to be based on mutual respect and equal treatment. I was no longer willing to be the sister who always accommodated and received little in return. Around the same time, my parents reached out through Aunt Karen. They wanted to do family therapy, they said. They wanted to work on our relationships. I appreciated that they were at least acknowledging there were problems that needed professional help, but I was not ready. I told Aunt Karen to tell them that maybe in the future I would be open to family therapy, but not now. I needed to work on myself first to strengthen my own sense of boundaries and self-worth before I exposed myself to them again in a therapeutic setting. The door was not locked forever, but it was firmly closed for now. My therapist supported this decision completely. She said I was doing exactly what I needed to do, taking time and space to heal, not rushing into reconciliation because others wanted me to, and keeping the focus on my own well-being rather than everyone else's comfort. As the months passed, I found myself thinking about my family less and less. When I did think about them, it was with a kind of distant sadness rather than acute pain. I had processed the grief of losing the family I thought I had. Now I was building the life I actually wanted. I went on dates occasionally, though I was not in a rush to find a serious relationship. I had learned that my worth was not dependent on my relationship status, that being single was not a character flaw or something to be ashamed of. The next time I chose to be with someone, it would be because they added to my already full life, not because I needed them to complete me. My friend circle expanded. I met people through various activities who became genuine friends, the kind who showed up when you needed them and celebrated your wins without jealousy. I hosted my first ever Friendsgiving at my apartment, cooking for 10 people and feeling proud of the community I had built. 6 months after the Hawaii incident on a random Tuesday, I realized something profound. I was happy. Not the performative happiness I had often felt before, where I told everyone I was fine while feeling empty inside, but real, genuine, deep contentment with my life. I had learned to love myself enough to walk away from people who did not treat me well, even when those people were family. I had learned that setting boundaries was not mean or selfish, but necessary for self-preservation. I had learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to say no, to walk away, to choose your own peace over someone else's comfort. The final payment from my parents cleared on schedule. $6,200 returned in full as agreed. I did not feel triumphant when I saw it. I just felt closure. This chapter was complete. The financial exploitation had been rectified, even if the emotional wounds were still healing. I thought about reaching out to thank them for following through on the payment, but I decided against it. Paying back money you owe is not something that deserves gratitude. It is basic decency. They had done what they should have done, nothing more. Instead, I took that money and did something for myself. I booked a solo trip to New Zealand, something I had always dreamed about but never thought I could afford or justify. I would spend 2 weeks hiking, exploring, and being completely present in my own life. No obligations to anyone but myself. As I sat planning that trip, looking at pictures of mountains and glaciers and turquoise lakes, I felt grateful for everything that had happened. Not grateful for the pain or the betrayal, but grateful for the awakening it had triggered. I had spent 28 years trying to earn my place in my family, trying to be good enough, trying to be the daughter and sister they wanted. Now I was free to just be Kelly. Flawed, imperfect, still learning and growing, but whole. I had chosen myself, and that choice had opened up a world of possibilities I never knew existed. I used to think family meant accepting whatever they gave you, good or bad. Now I know family should be people who actually see your worth, who treat you with basic respect and kindness. And if they don't, you have every right to walk away and find people who do. Some doors close, not because you are unforgiving, but because you finally learned you deserve to walk through better ones. And sometimes the most painful lessons teach us the most important truths, that self-respect is not selfish, that boundaries are not cruel, and that choosing your peace over toxic relationships is not something to apologize for. It is something to celebrate. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who took you for granted? How did you find the courage to choose yourself? I would love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and share this with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it helps you remember that you are worthy of respect and genuine love always. Take care of yourselves out there, and never forget that choosing your own well-being is never wrong.